Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. Talking about AEW, and this is the big story. Even though it's Fyter Fest Night 2 tonight on TNT, the big one to talk about is Daniel Bryan, former WWE World Heavyweight Champion Daniel Bryan, WrestleMania main eventer this year. Daniel Bryan. Of course, we last saw Daniel Bryan competing on SmackDown against Roman Reigns, where he lost the match and was banned from Friday Night SmackDown. Subsequently, his WWE contract expired, and as of right now, he's yet to come to terms on a new agreement with WWE. The expectation for a while was, of course, that he would, and the former World Heavyweight Champion would eventually return to WWE programming, but as of right now, he has not, and there's some interesting speculation and rumors and notes about his future with WWE and possibly a potential future with All Elite Wrestling. So this is a fascinating story and a developing one. At the moment, it's just speculation, but certainly when a big outlet like PW Insider comes out and reports this, it's certainly worth discussing. Now, there has been no internal discussion about Daniel Bryan possibly returning to WWE as of late. This is a report yesterday by PW Insider that reported that Daniel Bryan is also not listed on the internal WWE roster. Now, this is the really interesting part of this report by PW Insider. They are stating that there are some people within WWE who take this as a sign that Daniel Bryan is signing or will eventually sign with AEW. But it must be stressed there is no confirmation on if that's factually accurate, if Daniel Bryan is in negotiations with AEW, if he's intending to sign with AEW, if he signed already a contract with AEW, which of course he's free and able to do. If he wanted to, Daniel Bryan could appear on Fyter Fest Night 2 tonight on TNT. He's free to negotiate and sign with anyone because his WWE's contract expired. So, as I mentioned, Daniel Bryan is free to negotiate with whoever he pleases, and as of right now, he is not close to re-signing with WWE, which is certainly very, very interesting. Furthermore, what can be confirmed is that Daniel Bryan was not part of a recent list of talent plans for licensing and merchandising purposes for 2021 to 2022 that was put together by the company for internal use. This means that Daniel Bryan is not scheduled for any future Mattel action figure releases, merchandise plans, anything you can think of, t-shirts, lunch boxes, costumes, outfits, apparel, hats, you name it. Daniel Bryan is not planned for any of that, especially when it comes to for licensing stuff. As I mentioned, like action figures, they take time, and WWE has to submit a list of names that they want Mattel to license and create action figures for. So the fact that they're saying to Mattel and to all of their licensing partners and internally on the WWE roster run sheets that Daniel Bryan is not part of that. He's not part of our plans for the second half of the year. This comes after a report, by the way, that I think it was a couple of weeks ago or something like that, that stated that the graphics department and video package departments, the digital departments, were explicitly told not to put Daniel Bryan in future video packages, graphics, etc., which once again raises the question and speculation about Daniel Bryan's future within WWE and possibly Bryan signing with AEW. Now, there was some fan speculation on Daniel Bryan possibly returning to WWE last month after he was name-dropped on SmackDown, but this was just for the build to the Money in the Bank match between Hall of Famer Edge and Universal Champion Roman Reigns, and of course was not a sign that he was returning. Now, Daniel Bryan's WWE future has been up in the air since he lost that career versus championship match against Roman Reigns on the April 30th edition of SmackDown on Fox. His contract with WWE reportedly expired at that time, and while at one point he was expected to remain with WWE in some capacity or form, since then there has been no update on his status. Now, this is of course very, very interesting. The whole AEW development side of it is fascinating, and I had this discussion. I posted this today on social media, and I think it's a great topic point. I'd love to get your thoughts on this in the comment section below. If Daniel Bryan were to sign with AEW, is that the biggest signing that AEW has ever pulled off in their short history? For me, the topics of the biggest signings in AEW history, they are Chris Jericho and they're Jon Moxley. Now, obviously, people are going to go, WWE name, whatever. But they're the two biggest names. You're talking about former world champions. Yes, they've signed Paul White, and I know Paul White is a former world champion and all this kind of stuff, but they're getting Paul White at the end of his career. He's still going to wrestle, but they're not getting the big show in his prime or anything like that. Not that they got Jericho in his prime, but Jericho's career is so different that, if anything, he's almost like a late bloomer in the sense that, this is a Jericho that was red hot, coming off of his WWE run, and of course Jericho coming off of his New Japan run as well. This is a really a red hot Chris Jericho. So that's a bit of a different conversation. So for me, realistically, as I mentioned, the topic there has to be, is he the biggest signing in AEW's history if Daniel Bryan does indeed sign with AEW? And it's up there. I would probably say Jericho just pips it in terms of, the monumentalness, if that's a word, of the signing for AEW. I mean, Chris Jericho, this was a guy that since 1999, he hadn't appeared on any other pro wrestling program. He was a multiple-time world champion, WrestleMania main eventer, in the same vein that Daniel Bryan was, but he was so ingrained in WWE's history at that point, and whilst he would take time off from WWE, he would always come back, and he would always come back and work for WWE, and he was open saying that I would never work for another company. I'm always loyal to Vince McMahon. I would never go anywhere else. The day that I don't work for WWE is the day I retire, all that kind of stuff, and that changed. And as I mentioned, Chris Jericho was red hot coming off his last WWE run. He got even hotter going to New Japan, working the angles with the likes of Kenny Omega, Naito, etc. And and let's face it, it was an unknown company at that point, AEW. People knew that they were well backed by Tony Khan. They had the billionaire owner and all that kind of stuff, and the TV deal on TNT. But Chris Jericho, for what people's opinions are about him, whether they like him or not, he legitimized AEW. Not just by signing with the company, but also that first few months of Dynamite on TNT, that was critical. Because let's face it, if AEW went to TNT, and those first 3 or 4 months, if the ratings were terrible and they just completely disappeared and the production quality was terrible and all that kind of stuff, they'd have been cancelled by TNT. TNT would have said no thanks, and then AEW would have been essentially finished. But they had Chris Jericho as the champion. The ratings were good. The quality was good. The buzz continued. And then by January, TNT are paying AEW. They're paying AEW for their program. That wasn't the case at the start. It was kind of, we'll split the ad revenue 50-50. AEW was barely making any money on Dynamite. And then after a few months, TNT realized, oh, wait a minute, this is a good program. They've got top quality stars. Yes, we'll pay you a lot of money. So that's significant. And that's not just on Chris Jericho, but Chris Jericho was a big driving force behind all of that because of that early success of AEW. So for me, Jericho's the biggest signing in AEW history, but let's face it, Daniel Bryan would be right up there. This is a guy that, again, is coming off of WWE television, of main eventing WrestleMania this year. His last match on WWE television was for the Universal Championship. He's part of one of the biggest moments in recent WWE history, in that WrestleMania 30 pay-per-view where he beats Triple H in the opening match and wins the World Heavyweight Championship, defeating Batista and Randy Orton in the main event. I mean, he's the ultimate underdog babyface. He created the Yes movement and the Yes chants, all based on him. It's a massive, massive deal for Daniel Bryan. Now, the WWE stans and loyalists on social media have been very against this. How dare Daniel Bryan? We don't even know if this is accurate by all accounts. Let's face it here. It's just some speculation within the WWE that he might be negotiating. It was mentioned in this report by PW Insider that if Daniel Bryan indeed has re-signed, or that has signed rather, with AEW, or there are intentions of Daniel Bryan to sign with AEW, AEW will move heaven and earth to keep it a secret. And I think, if anything, they were probably slightly frustrated that the Malakai Black signing kind of leaked out slightly before Road Rager a couple of weeks ago. It was first reported by Sean Ross Sapp, and that was because of the scuttlebutt backstage in AEW. And I'm sure, for a fact, AEW will want to keep Daniel Bryan a secret if indeed he has signed with them. So, again, this is just more sort of speculation, but Daniel Bryan, as much as he's been quiet since he left WWE, in his closing sort of months with WWE, he was very open. He said, I'd want to stay with WWE. Of course I do. But also, I realize I don't have a ton of time left in terms of being inside the ring. I also realize I want to spend more time at home. And I also realize that I don't want to have any regrets. I got a second lease of life when it comes to my pro wrestling career. And I want to travel. I want to work in New Japan. I want to try out the different territories. I want to face the opponents I haven't faced before. I want to do it all, and I realize I don't have a lot of time to do it. And he realizes this contract is probably his last as an active in-ring performer, and he want to make it worthwhile. And that doesn't just mean financially. And it's not all about the finances for Daniel Bryan. It's about the opportunity. It's about the creative. It's about opponents, etc. And I'm totally sure that whilst he really does want to stay with WWE because they like him there, he likes it there, his wife is factored into that company as well. Daniel Bryan was part of the creative team for SmackDown during his last run there. I'm also sure that he looks at AEW and he realizes, look, WWE's returning to touring. I don't want to return to touring. Physically, I might not be able to return to touring, and I don't want to spend that time away from my family. AEW is once a week. They also allow me to work dates with New Japan, once Japan, if it gets back to a sense of normalcy. He realizes that's an attractive offer, and obviously with the working relationships, he can do a shot in Ring of Honor. He can do a shot in Impact. He can do a shot wherever he wants. And that flexibility means a lot. It means a lot. Way more than money ever will to Daniel Bryan. This is a guy that's a very thrifty guy, and it's hardly a flashy big spender. So, whilst it's an interesting report, again, nothing is confirmed, it's just merely speculation. But let's face it, if AEW was able to pull this off, it would be, which we are talking, again, right up there as one of the biggest names that AEW has ever signed in the history of the company. It's right up there with Jericho. I think it beats Moxley, frankly, considering where Daniel Bryan is coming from in terms of WWE, in terms of where he was at the time in which he left. And obviously, again, former multiple-time world champion, one of the best in-ring performers still to this day in the world. It's a big deal. But again, we don't know confirmation on it, so we'll have to wait and see. But look, it's a big story, and maybe, just maybe, it's going to become even bigger over the course of the next few weeks. Let's talk about AEW Grand Slam Dynamite, because AEW's first ever stadium show is almost sold out. AEW Dynamite Grand Slam is set for the Arthur Ashe Stadium in Queens, New York. Now, according to Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer newsletter, the September 22 show has sold more than 15,000 tickets. Capacity was originally set at 17,000. Tickets went on sale Friday, July 16. Meltzer noted on Twitter that it will be the largest crowd in AEW history and the largest non-WWE crowd for United States Pro Wrestling since 1999, which of course was WCW. Now, AEW Dynamite Grand Slam will also be the first pro wrestling event to be held at the stadium's tennis complex in Arthur Ashe Stadium. AEW did 15,100 plus after the first day of public sale for Arthur Ashe Stadium. As I mentioned, it will be the largest crowd in company history and the largest non-WWE crowd for US pro wrestling since 1999 with WCW. It's a massive achievement. I think it looks likely that it will sell out when you're talking about a stadium that they're going with the capacity of 17,000 and they've already sold over 15,000, and we're what? About 2 months away still from the event. Given once they start announcing matches for that show, once they start to build up the hype and anticipation for that show, it's going to sell out. I have no doubt in my mind that's going to sell out, and it's a massive, massive achievement for AEW. And I'm not saying this as someone, you're an AEW stan or you're just an AEW mark. I'm saying this as Dave Meltzer said there, and I don't agree with Meltzer on everything, far from it. I think, if anything, like I said, when it comes to things on AEW, obviously he leans to their side way too much to be impartial, in my opinion. But, that stat there by it's the largest non-WWE United States crowd for a pro wrestling event since 1999, how isn't that a good thing? How isn't that a good thing? That's fantastic for pro wrestling, that there are alternatives there that can sell out a stadium. In 2021, a couple of years ago, you'd be laughed at if you said that. So it's fantastic for pro wrestling, and it should raise everyone's game because there are options now. There truly are options. I thought Fyter Fest last week was fantastic, one of the best Dynamites they've ever produced. I'm very excited for tonight as well. So it's very exciting, and AEW should absolutely be congratulated on it, because you'd have said, even with AEW last year, if you said, can they sell out a stadium, you'd say absolutely not, even with obviously the pandemic. But it's a massive, massive achievement. It's a massive achievement for AEW, and it's really exciting, I think, for pro wrestling in that sense. Now, I did mention there that Fyter Fest Night 2 was tonight on TNT. We have some matches announced for the show, one being the first in-ring singles match for Impact World Tag Team Champion Doc Gallows, because Frankie Kazarian will face off against Gallows tonight on AEW Fyter Fest Night 2 on TNT. The match was announced during AEW Dark Elevation on Monday night as Kazarian defeated Baron Black. Brandon Cutler tried to attack Kazarian after the match but came up short. Gallows then laid Kazarian out. This will be the first singles match match for Gallows in AEW tonight. As I mentioned, tonight's AEW Fyter Fest Night 2 will take place at the Curtis Colwell Center in Garland, Texas. Other matches that have been announced include The Blade versus Orange Cassidy and the Five Believers of Jericho Chapter 1, Chris Jericho versus Shawn Spears, with only Spears being able to utilize a steel chair. So I don't think they'll be able to top what they did last week, because I thought last week's show was really spectacular. I thought it was fantastic. But if they get anywhere close to it tonight, then still it will be a very, very good show. So I'm excited to see what AEW pull off tonight. And last week's show, Fyter Fest Night 1, did feature an appearance by Malakai Black, the former Aleister Black, and he's been saying a few interesting things about his time with WWE, his signing with AEW. Now, Black recently spoke with Metal Injection in a recent interview. Now, there was recent reports that WWE officials wanted Aleister Black to be brought back to WWE. However, Black's sights were set on AEW the moment he was released by the company. He said in his interview, quote, that joining AEW was the immediate thought process. I was sick of it even before everything went down. I loved my time in NXT, but I felt I did nothing of importance on the main roster. It was too much bipolar 50-50 booking. They would push me and pull me off TV. And he's not wrong. I mean, everyone complains about that 50-50 booking. And it's this weird... What's funny with 50-50 booking is they try and do it to protect everyone, but in reality, it gets no one over. That's the crazy thing, is that they do this 50-50 booking because they don't want to bury anyone, or they don't want to hurt anyone, but in reality, it hurts everyone. It's such an oxymoron that I think everyone would agree that they're tired of the 50-50 booking. He went on then to take a shot at WWE's current product. He said, quote, honestly, that's 50-50 booking the entire product right now. There's nothing really consistent. Everything changes week to week, or is done to the point of beating it to death, which is very, very true. Now, Black then shared his wife, WWE superstar Zelina Vega, her reaction to his release. He said, quote, it's funny, but as soon as I got released, my wife started crying. And I actually started laughing because they built me up for 5 to 6 weeks. They made me come back, and now they're pulling me off TV again. I just couldn't take the whole situation seriously anymore. I realized that it was not worth it anymore. I just felt a huge relief, and I just started laughing. And I immediately knew that this was the feeling of freedom, not having to deal with it anymore. So I think he seems much happier already. And I know people are complaining about Malakai Black facing off against Cody and, oh, he's going to get the Cody rub and all that kind of stuff. Look, if AEW, and we don't know, but if AEW have Malakai Black lose to Cody in any of his first few matches, Cody Rhodes, I've mentioned this time and time again. I mentioned it with Anthony Ogogo. It's a different situation with Malakai Black, but I mentioned it with Anthony Ogogo that Cody Rhodes is Cody Rhodes. He is bulletproof in this company right now. Lord knows we know it because AEW push him to right in our face of Cody Rhodes is a big star. He's a big star. He's a big star. He's got a reality show. He's a judge on TBS's Go Big Show. He's a big celebrity. He's friends with Snoop Dogg, by the way, and all this kind of stuff. We know Cody Rhodes is a big star because AEW tells us every week that he's a big star. It doesn't matter if he loses to Malakai Black once, twice, 3 times. How ironic would it be if Malakai Black is complaining about 50-50 booking and then we have a situation where Malakai Black wins one and then Cody Rhodes wins one? We don't need to see it. Malakai Black should dominate Cody Rhodes. If AEW has any realization of how good and strong Malakai Black can be for them, they would have Malakai Black squash Cody to make a statement. Whether or not they do that, time will only tell. Finally, we have an update about a post-all-out edition of Dynamite, and it's going to debut in Jon Moxley's hometown. AEW has announced that they will make their Cincinnati, Ohio debut for the September 8th edition of Dynamite on TNT. This will be, of course, a homecoming of sorts for the IWGP United States Champion Jon Moxley, who, of course, is from Cincinnati and is featured front and center on the promotional material for the show. This will also be the post-all-out edition of Dynamite. Dynamite on September 8th will go live from the Fifth Third Arena in Cincinnati on the campus of the University of Cincinnati. Tickets go on sale this Friday, July 23. Really excited to see what that reaction is going to be like for Moxley. Obviously, it'll be great. Whether or not Moxley will still be the IWGP United States Champion by that time, I don't know. But he's going to come out to Wild Thing, of course, with Eddie Kingston and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, he's scheduled to face Lance Archer tonight as well in a Texas Death Match on AEW Fyter Fest Night 2. Really excited for that one. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be violent, but I think Moxley retains. Whether or not, as I mentioned, Moxley will still be the champion by then, I don't know. I don't know. I would love to see a situation, and I don't know if they'll go this direction because it's after All Out. There have been rumblings of Moxley versus Onita inside of an AEW ring. I don't know if they pay that off at All Out or they wait until maybe Full Gear later this year. If they're waiting until Full Gear, the argument could be made that you do a main event, which is a homecoming of Jon Moxley. That's when you have Onita come out, square up to Moxley, and then you set up the Full Gear match between them both. I don't know if that's going to happen. That is purely speculation on my part, but I'd love to see it. But anyway, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these AEW stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, gut the rankings, and get to people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.